Hi, my name is Doug Strain, and I'm a trainer and technical writer for Veracity Networks. This is going to be an introductory tutorial to how to administer VoIP phone systems. I'll be starting off by telling you how you can get support 24/7. We'll also be going to see where you'd log into the administrative site, how to log in, bookmark it, and so forth. I'll be showing you basic navigation and how to administer your administrators. And we'll also be looking at your services and service packs as well as your phone numbers, ways to look that information up. So let's get started. So the first thing is how to get support, which you can get 24/7, 365, locally in Utah at 801-379-3000, but also toll free at 1-800-213-1315. And you can email us at csgroup@veracitynetworks.com. Our administrative website is located at https, that's S as in secure, //hosted.veracitynetworks.com. When you go there, you're probably going to want to create a bookmark so you can get back to it later. The way our system works is when you go to hosted.veracitynetworks.com, it'll either take you to WSV1 or WSV2, as you'll be able to see in the URL. That's because there's two different servers that are load balancing, and sometimes we take one or the other off for maintenance. If you're going to hosted as opposed to one or the other in your bookmark, that way it'll always go to the one that's up if one of them's down. So definitely do it that way. And then we just log in, and it'll take you to this main page where you'll have several options along the left sidebar. It'll default to the profile section, but there's also resources, services, and some others, which will give you different options depending on which one you're in. You'll primarily be going into profile, resources, and services. I'll start by showing you some of the things you can look up in the resources section. We'll get back to the profile afterwards. Inside the resources section, you can see all the phone numbers that are assigned to you. If you do a blank search, it'll just bring all of them up. This is a good way where you can look up to see, for instance, what your voice portal number is, or any of your agents for that matter. Another good one here in the resources area is services, where you can go in and see how many you've purchased and how many you've used for all the different service packs and services. For instance, if you've got hunt groups and how many of them. And don't worry that like if you have a platinum user, they're going to have a platinum, a premium, and a basic license. They all bundle together. Each service pack is basically a pack of a whole bunch of little services into one pack. And each of the premium, basic, and platinums have different services. So when you add all three together, you get the complete amount, which is the platinum package. And that's all included at one price. It's not like you're paying for three different licenses so much as you're paying for platinum, which includes premium and basic. Another good thing in the resources that you might want to use is the existing user services link, where you can see not only what you've got purged, or at least what you've got assigned. You can also click on the view users to go in and see, okay, who has the platinum licenses. Also inside of the resources area is the new user services template. This could be a convenient one for putting your most basic services that all of your people are going to have. For instance, they'll all have basic. And they probably, or maybe you'll want all of them to have voice messaging user, which is basically voicemail. So you can set that and apply it, and then it kind of speeds things up a little bit if you're adding new users down the line. And then the assign group services section is where you can go in and assign anything that you've purchased and is available to you. You can come here and add them across. You can shift click to pick multiple ones, or control click to just do one or the other. And then you just add or remove, or you can do add all or remove all. And that's pretty much the stuff you find interesting in resources. And services is where you would go if you purchase hunt groups from us, or an auto attendant. You can go in and modify them here. Both the auto attendant and the hunt group have their own tutorial videos. So I won't go into any kind of detail there. This is also where you can go in and upload if you've got music on hold. You can come here and just click on add them in there. You can go in and edit it later. There is a group default one that's already there in case you don't have your own music. And that's pretty much the main stuff in resources and services that will interest you. If you have a call center, then you'll have a call center link here. Call centers cost extra, so you'll either have it or not. And then profile is the main thing you'll be going into. And before I get to users, which is probably your main interest, I'm going to show you here the administrators. This is where you can go in and change a password or add an administrator, change the password. Each administrator can be set with certain things that they can administer and maybe restricted to other things. Typically, organizations usually just have one or two main administrators that has everything, but you could do many administrators if you wanted to. You can come here and create departments if you want to, sales department, billing department, and so forth. They can be handy or not. Some people do it, some people don't. You can go in here and do your schedules. This is for like if your auto attendant has business hours and after hours, it would go based on these schedules. You can also do schedules for whether or not you're, say for instance, an individual cell phone rings simultaneously with the business number. You can set that to only do it during business hours. You can set a holiday schedule and so forth. This is all stuff that we'll cover in its own chapter, so I'm not going to go into the details on that, but just know generally this is where you would get to it. And that's the main things on this part here. So let's go ahead and get into users. You can search for your users by various things like their extension or last name or whatever. You can set it so it goes by whether it starts with, contains, or equals to. But if you're not in a particularly big organization, the easiest, fastest way is just to do a blank search, and it'll bring up everybody that's registered with us. You may have, if there's 2 or 3 pages worth, then you can navigate down here. In this case, this example, we're in the sandbox, which is a non-existent group that we just use for demo purposes. And so we don't need that many agents in here. So let's pull up. You can click on the edit button if you wanted to, but you can click on anywhere on this line really, and it'll bring up the agents. I've just pulled up agent 1, as you can see up here. And it starts off in this profile. It has various options. The main ones of which that really are only going to interest you probably are profile, incoming calls, and messaging where the voicemail gets set up. So we're going to go back to the profile for agent 1. If you were recycling a license, say for instance you used to have a receptionist who's no longer there, but you've got a replacement that's sitting at the exact same phone that used to be exact same hunt groups or call centers, the easiest way to recycle the license is to just come in here, change their name, click apply. If you've got any information down there you might switch to, but really it's the name, and the calling line ID is another one. On calling line ID, you've probably either got it set up so that everybody from your group all uses the same information, but it's possible to go in there and make that configurable on a case-by-case basis. This, if you were set for configurable, this is where you would set what people would see when your agent 1 called a customer. They'd see, in this case, it'd be agent 1 and whatever phone number you put in there, assuming you want to put a phone number in there. And then you just click apply, and that's done. Pop out real quickly at agent 1 and go back to the group level. Call processing policies. This is where you set your calling line ID information. For external calls, if you wanted to use configurable for your agents, or at least have the configurable option, that's where that happens at right there. So that's what we were just talking about. So we're back in profile, we're going to users. We're going to blank search, go back into agent 1. And we've looked at profile. Now we're going to look at addresses, which you would think is a mailing address or something, but that's where the phone number is. Your agents don't necessarily need their own phone number. You may or may not have purchased individual phone numbers for them, or maybe you've just got them all operating by extension numbers. That's quite possible too. But if you need a number added in here, I would suggest contacting either your account manager, or if you don't have one, just contact customer service and say, hey, I'd like to purchase a new phone number. Your agents probably are going to have a phone device unless they're doing all their calls through their computer. This is where that gets set up. You go to Identity Device Profile. You click the drop down to find the MAC address. If you're grabbing a phone device that was formerly associated with somebody else, and now you're giving it to this new employee, you come to the drop down and get it. Or you might need to do a new Identity Device Profile for a new phone. What we do on that is we always put the MAC address in here for the name, because that makes it easier to find in other parts of the system. And you need to set the phone type, because our system needs to know how to send programming to the phone device, and the phone device, our system needs to know what kind of programming to expect in response from the phone device. And that varies from model to model. Even within a single manufacturer like Polycom, each of their models is a little bit different. So it's important that we get the right profile type so that our system knows how to communicate with the phone device. Host name and IP address and port, we can leave blank. The MAC address, of course, is the MAC address, which wouldn't look like this since that's obviously not hexadecimal, but for demonstration purposes, maybe it's a little bit easier to recognize that way. The line port will be your agent's username, such as for the sandbox, say for instance, the code is SAN123 for extension 123, or whatever it happens to be. And then the domain, if your phone device is behind an Edgewater, then we'd be putting the IP address of your Edgewater right here. Otherwise, you would just be voice.broadweave.net, which means you're outside of an Edgewater and just connecting to our cloud directly across the internet from somewhere. And then you just apply it to make those changes. This is where you go. This is one that our agents or administrators use a lot, is passwords. This is where you can go reset the password. The web access password is what they use if they're using our unified communications to log in. And it's also what they'd use to log in to this website here. A lot of our administrators don't want their agents logging into this website. They really can't do all that much, but some use it, some don't. If you don't want them in here, just don't tell them what the password is. That's easy enough. Or if you do want them to have this access, or they're using unified communications and need it for that, you could reset it here. I'm putting in a password that I know is not going to work for example purposes. And it gave me an invalid password because it needs to be at least 6 characters, but not more than 60 characters. And it needs to include at least one number, at least one uppercase letter, and at least one lowercase letter. It doesn't have to have special characters, but you can use those too. Cancel out of that and go to set portal password, which is the numeric passcode that people use to check their voicemail. So it's always going to want it to be all numbers so that they can just punch it into a phone to get their voicemail. And again, you can do personal schedules. You don't need to, but you could. You may have, for instance, on my own phone, I've got a personal schedule set up because I've got my phone set to ring my cell phone simultaneously, but I've got a schedule set on that rule so that it only does that during business hours. You may want to do individual schedules for your guys. You've also probably got group schedules. You can see you can have personal versus group, holiday versus regular time schedules. Those are set up so that your auto attendant or your hunt group will know when to use the after hours handling and when to use the regular hours handling. The topic of scheduling is its own module. I'll have a separate tutorial for that one, but just knowing generally that you can come in and set scheduling in here if you wanted to for an individual agent, or you can go to the top group level and do it for everybody. And here you can also assign services or unassign. Just say, for instance, you don't want to have platinum anymore. You can pull that out. You can do things like you can shift click and you can control click. And there's an add all, remove all, or just a simple add and remove, and then you click apply. If you've purchased call centers from us, this is where you could go in to assign this agent to, say, the billing call center or the sales call center or the tech support call center. That's the main stuff you'd be wanting to worry about here. The other thing you'd be interested in with an agent's incoming calls, where you've got a bunch of different options. I'm covering that one in a separate module too, so I'm going to leave that to the other tutorial. And then messaging is where you can go turn on voice management, which is their voicemail basically. And you can go in here and you can turn it off or on. You can make it so all calls go to voicemail automatically. You can choose between having it go, the voicemails go to the phone device or going to email. It's an either or. And you can also choose whether or not the phone device is even going to have the blinking light saying, hey, you've got a voicemail waiting. Now, if you want it to go to your phone device or your regular voicemail and by email as an attachment, then just choose the phone option up here and the email option down here, and then it'll go to both, which can be really handy. Say, for instance, you're doing the voicemail for the different ones, and you get a voicemail for the billing team. You can just email it over to the billing team, and you get one that needs a certain kind of specialty of technical expertise. You can email it to them. It's a lot easier than having to write down the name and number and then turn around and email somebody and say, hey, I need you to call so and so about such and such. You can just send them the message and say, hey, listen to the message and go help this customer. So it can be really convenient that way. There's also some advanced settings that have to be set up to get it to communicate. This password might throw you off a little bit. That's an internal password that we use for one of our systems to communicate with another part of our system. So don't try and reset the password here. If you are adding a voicemail for somebody, let us know. We'll create the voicemail for them, because even if you come in here and apply it and you set it up just right on this end, it still won't have an actual mailbox itself. We still have to build that, and that's something that only a Veracity employee can do for you. I don't need to worry about that any further than that. One other thing that's useful in users is utilities. If they're having a problem communicating with our system, if their phone, for whatever reason, isn't getting calls, you go into registrations. If the phone is connected to us, you'll see a bunch of information about when it connected to us, what model of phone it is, what the MAC address is, some really useful troubleshooting information. If it says no entries present, that means that that phone device isn't getting to our system to connect to it, which is usually a networking issue. Maybe the Ethernet's not plugged into the back of the phone. Maybe the phone's a lemon. I mean, it could be a lot of things. Maybe it's just a simple network issue. But the registrations area can be useful too. And that's the basics for user administration and more generally just getting around our admin system. We'll have separate tutorials that'll cover other things like doing hunt groups or auto attendance and schedules, the incoming call section I talked about earlier. Thank you.